There is a moment that happens to every believer eventually. A moment where you stop holding on with white knuckles, and you finally let go. And what happens after that moment is so different from what most people expect that I almost didn't believe it myself the first time I saw it play out in someone's life. Today I'm going to walk you through 6 things that happen when you fully surrender to God. Not surrender as defeat, not surrender as giving up. Surrender as the moment you stop fighting God for control of a life He was always trying to carry for you. And I promise you, by the 6th one, you are going to see your own life differently than you did 5 minutes ago. Stay with me until the end, because the last one is the one nobody talks about, and it might be the exact thing you've been missing. Let's start with a question. What does surrender actually cost you? Because everyone talks about what you gain. Almost no one talks about what breaks first. And that's exactly where we begin. 1. Your grip loosens before your peace arrives. I want to be honest with you about something most churches don't say out loud. Surrender does not feel peaceful at first. It feels like falling. I once knew a man named Daniel who ran a small business he had built from nothing. Every decision, every dollar, every risk, he carried alone. He prayed about his business constantly. But if you listened closely to those prayers, they weren't really asking God to lead. They were asking God to bless what he had already decided to do. Then the business hit a wall. Contracts fell through. Debt piled up. And for the first time in years, Daniel had no next move. He told me later that the scariest prayer he ever prayed was 1 sentence long. God, I don't know what to do anymore, so it's yours. He said the moment those words left his mouth, he expected relief. Instead, he felt like he was in free fall. Nothing external changed that day, but something internal did. He had spent years gripping the wheel so tightly that his hands had gone numb without him realizing it. Letting go didn't feel like peace. It felt like his hands finally remembering how to feel again, and that feeling was uncomfortable before it was good. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Notice God doesn't say be still and immediately feel comfortable. Stillness is not naturally comfortable to a heart that has been gripping control for years. If you are in that free fall feeling right now, that is not a sign you did something wrong. That is the first sign that your hands are finally opening. Hold on to that, because chapter 2 is going to show you exactly what fills that empty space once your hands stay open. 2. The noise in your head gets quieter, but only after it gets loud. Here's something nobody warns you about. When you surrender control, your mind doesn't go silent right away. It actually gets loud first, because your mind has spent years being the one in charge, and it is not going to give up that job without a fight. I think of the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 19. He had just experienced one of the greatest victories of his life on Mount Carmel. Fire fell from heaven. God showed up undeniably. And yet the very next chapter, Elijah is running for his life, exhausted, and praying that he could just die under a broom tree. Then God does something interesting. He doesn't send another display of fire. 1 Kings 19:11-12 says, "There was a great and strong wind, then an earthquake, then a fire, and the Lord was not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. Then came a still, small voice." Notice the order. The chaos came first. The whisper came after. That is exactly what surrender feels like inside your own mind. The anxious thoughts, the racing what-ifs, the mental noise, they show up first, louder than ever, almost like static, right before a radio finds its station. But if you stay in that stillness, instead of running from it, the noise eventually gives way to something quieter and steadier underneath it. Most people quit right in the middle of the wind and the earthquake because they assume God isn't there. But he was never in the noise to begin with. He was waiting in the whisper on the other side of it. And once you hear that whisper even once, something shifts permanently. Which brings us to the 3rd thing that happens. And this one changes how you see every hard season you've ever walked through. 3. Your definition of a wasted season disappears completely. Before surrender, pain feels pointless. A lost job feels like failure. A broken relationship feels like proof something is wrong with you. A delayed dream feels like evidence that God forgot about you. But once you actually surrender control, something shifts in how you interpret your own story. I think about Joseph in Genesis, sold by his own brothers, falsely accused, forgotten in a prison cell for years. From the outside, every single year of that story looked wasted. But Joseph said something remarkable to his brothers, years later in Genesis 50:20. "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Notice he didn't say the evil wasn't real. He didn't pretend the betrayal didn't hurt. He said God was working underneath it, the entire time, even during the years that looked completely wasted from where Joseph was standing. Here's what surrender does. It doesn't remove the pain from your past. It removes the word wasted from how you describe it. You start looking back at seasons you once called pointless and start noticing the fingerprints of something being built the whole time, even when you couldn't see it. And once you start seeing that pattern in your past, you start expecting it in your present, which completely changes how you handle hard seasons moving forward. Speaking of handling hard seasons, Chapter 4 is going to show you what happens to your anxiety specifically, and it's not what you'd expect. 4. Your anxiety doesn't disappear. It changes address. This one surprises people the most. A lot of teaching out there makes it sound like once you trust God fully, anxiety just vanishes. That's not quite true, and I don't want to lie to you. What actually happens is your anxiety changes where it lives. Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds." Read that carefully. It doesn't say don't feel anxious. It says take the anxious thing directly to God instead of carrying it silently in your own chest. Before surrender, anxiety sits in your chest, your shoulders, your sleepless nights. It becomes a permanent tenant. After surrender, that same anxious feeling still shows up sometimes, but instead of setting up permanent residence, it becomes a signal, a prompt that sends you straight into prayer instead of straight into spiraling. The anxiety doesn't disappear immediately. Its job changes. Instead of controlling you, it starts pointing you back to God every single time it shows up. Over months, as you keep responding that way instead of white-knuckling through it alone, the intensity does lessen. But the real shift isn't less anxiety at first. It's a completely different relationship with it. And once your response to anxiety changes, something even bigger starts changing underneath the surface, something we're going to unpack in Chapter 5, because this next one affects every single relationship in your life. 5. You stop needing people to agree with you in order to feel steady. Before surrender, your peace is often quietly tied to whether other people approve of your choices, understand your season, or validate your decisions. And when they don't, it shakes you more than you'd like to admit. I think of David hiding in the cave of Adullam in 1 Samuel 22, rejected by Saul, misunderstood by his own family, surrounded only by men who were themselves in distress, in debt, and discontented. Not exactly a group of people who could offer him stability or approval. And yet Psalm 34, which many believe David wrote during that exact season, opens with, "I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth." David wasn't surrounded by agreement. He wasn't surrounded by understanding. And yet he found steadiness that didn't depend on any of that. Surrender does something quiet, but massive here. It moves the foundation of your peace off of human approval and onto something that doesn't shift depending on who's in the room. This doesn't mean relationships stop mattering to you. It means they stop being the thing holding you together. And once your peace stops depending on people, you become strangely free to love people better, without needing anything back from them to stay steady yourself. Now, everything I've told you so far builds toward one final thing, and honestly, this is the one that took me the longest to actually understand, so stay with me for this last one. 6. You stop waiting for the version of your life where everything is finally resolved. This is the one nobody talks about, and it's the one that changes everything else. Before surrender, most of us are quietly waiting for a finish line. Once this problem is solved, once this relationship heals, once this provision comes, then I'll finally feel at peace. Then I'll finally trust God completely. But that finish line keeps moving, because life keeps bringing new problems the moment the old ones resolve. Paul understood this better than almost anyone in Scripture. He wrote from a prison cell, not from a season of comfort. In Philippians 4, verse 11 through 12, I have learned, in whatever situation I am, to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Notice the word learned. This wasn't Paul's natural personality. It was something surrender taught him over time, in a literal prison, not in a season where all his problems were finally resolved. Full surrender isn't waiting for the resolved version of your life to finally trust God. It's trusting Him fully inside the unresolved version, right now, today, in the middle of whatever you're currently facing. And here's the part that ties every single thing we've talked about together. Your grip loosens before peace arrives. The noise gets loud before it gets quiet. Wasted seasons stop looking wasted. Anxiety changes address instead of disappearing. Your peace stops depending on other people's approval. And finally, you stop waiting for resolution to start trusting completely. None of these 6 things happen instantly. They happen slowly, in layers, the same way trust always grows, one surrendered moment at a time. If any part of this spoke directly to something you're walking through right now, I want you to do something simple. Write in the comments, right now, Lord, I surrender fully, not just the parts I've already given up on. Let that be your declaration today, not just words you read, but words you actually mean. And if you know someone who has been gripping the wheel so tightly their hands have gone numb, someone who needs to hear that letting go is not the same as giving up, send this to them today. It might be the exact thing that helps them finally open their hands. Don't forget to subscribe so we can keep growing together in biblical wisdom every week. God bless you, my brother, my sister. Until next time.